finally did it, guys. I finally made a good video without anything stupid preventing me from doing so. Or at least I thought. Yeah, that's right. I accidentally left OBS on display capture instead of window capture, so at the bottom right of the screen the entire time you can see activate Windows. Now I know, I should probably just get Windows, as that is the greatest solution to this problem, but I refuse to lose on this video. I refuse to let it go down like this, so instead of having activate Windows down there this entire time, I'm just going to slap this over the top of it. Anyways, guys, it's statistic time, and basically what that means is that I'm going to go over each segment of this entire power system. There's only 3 segments, but still, I'm going to go over them each individually and show how much power they output, and this will hopefully help you understand how much each of them actually contributes to the whole process, and that will hopefully give you an understanding of what will be worth your time and what will not be worth your time. So we're going to start with the big boys of the operation, the extra large wind turbine. And there are 8 of these, of course, each of these putting out 17 units of power. And 17 units of power times 8 is, 8 times 17 is 136, as we all obviously know. So 136 units of power will be coming out of these when they're all at the max. That sounds like just enough for a base, correct? Well, it's not, because as you can see, they for some reason like to spend most of their time off. I don't know if I'm using them wrong or if there is a right way to use them, but because of that, we needed batteries. Now batteries are kind of weird because the duration in which they are on completely depends on how much units of power they have had put into them. In other words, however charged they are, obviously depends on how long they last. But while they're on, if they are being called to use their max power, they will be using 5 units of power at the most, each of these, and there's 32 of them, so that means, at the most, this section of the power system will put out 160 units of power if necessary. As far as duration goes, if I did my math correctly, these things, which will hold 512 units of power, putting out 5 units of power a second, will last for 102.4 seconds at their max, but since we're not nerds, we're just going to say 100 units of power. And now for the RTGs, and this is the big part, because the RTGs, obviously, as I'm just going to go on ahead and get out of the way right off the bat, never turn off. They're always on. The amount of power they produce will constantly be the exact same, and they are 100% reliable because of it. Now, each of these things puts out 4 units of power, so that really just leaves us with 32 times 4, and that would give us the amount of units of power this thing puts out 24/7 non-stop, no matter the conditions, no matter the wind, no matter if the sun's out, no matter if they're charged, always 128 units of power, and that is what they are all, that's why they're good. And so now for the grand statistic, the moment you have all been waiting for. How much power can this entire system together at its very max, which isn't necessarily too common because that relies on the extra large wind turbines particularly, but if we pushed it, if everything was at its very max, we could get 424 units of power from this thing, which is absolutely absurd. When would you ever need that much power? But you never know. I always like to go big or go home, and as always, I never go home. Speaking of, if you would like me to go bigger, definitely leave a comment down below. I'm always going to be down to expand this power system because I'm just neat. But enough child's play. What does this mean for you, the viewer? Because obviously, if you clicked on this video, you either wanted to see this thing in action, or you wanted to know if it was worth it to build this thing for yourself in your own save. And either way, that means you want to see this thing in action. Now, instead of doing normal base activities such as scrapping, crafting, using the soil centrifuge, and smelting, we're going to do something else because we need to draw an absolutely absurd amount of power, and it's kind of unfeasible at this point to do so with the normal activities. But just in case you're curious, the reason we're doing this at all is to see how much power this base can average, because obviously we know it can put out 400 units of power at its most, but we want to know what we can handle on a normal basis so we can actually use this thing. But in order to draw a crap ton of power, we're going to be using these things, the atmospheric condensers, because each of these things draws 20 units of power, and the amount of atmospheric condensers we're going to start with is going to be 8, because that'll draw 160 power, and that sounds like a good start. But anyways, yes, just for scale, I have 4 RTGs at my current home base, and that can't even fully power one of these things. And here we are with 8 of them. And I can very much so guarantee you these are going to be fully powered, and I've got high confidence that the batteries aren't even going to be tapped into. And so more now I have, which this base is getting a little funky now. The ground's kind of uneven, but yep, you know how I said my videos are rushed earlier? I never said that. Well, it's kind of coming into play now as well, since I decided to do such an extreme thing for one video. After all, gathering 32 RTGs is definitely a challenge. But yes, I'll turn this thing on. And we will go watch the batteries in a time lapse to see just how hard this takes of a hit. The base, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Look, we're going to go watch the batteries. Oh, and also, I almost forgot to mention, this will be 260 units of power being drawn, and as I said, the base at its most can take something in the 400s, I don't remember, when it's at its max, but it's never going to really be at its max, so this could very well take it down, but very slowly if at all. Alright guys, I didn't quite let it finish, but it was very plain that the system was getting clapped. That was not going to go in my favor for very long, so we are going to exclude the last two of the atmospheric condensers on this nest test, and that should give us probably what's closer to a point of equal, you know what I'm saying. So guys, it seems like with cutting off the last four, leaving us with 180 units of power being drawn at all times equally across. That seems to be in the ballpark actually of what we were going for here. That seems to be relatively close to what this base can handle in exact. But if you want to be safe, probably just go to 160 units of power being drawn, and I can't imagine that that won't work out for you. But again, what does that mean for you, the viewer? Well, it basically means that RTGs are easily the king of power in this game. I mean, think about it. This entire system is only proven to be able to generate 160 units of power per second, and this entire mass on the left of all these wind turbines and batteries only produces 32 out of all that. Which begs the question, should the RTG actually be in the game? Because let's face it, it is absurd by any metric that I spent 3 hours gathering the resources I needed for these RTGs, and now I have power forever with perfect, flawless consistency. Now, of course, maybe sometime really late game I will be able to use 128 units of power, but it still doesn't change the fact that it was so easy to obtain. I mean, think about how hard it would be to get that type of system working with these after how hard it was. And in my opinion, that really is how the game should be. I think the struggle to have consistent power on a large scale should be a lot easier than me hopping over to a few planets and then having this many RTGs, which will never fail me. But maybe you disagree. Maybe you think the RTG is perfectly balanced and you think it should never be removed from the game. But definitely tell me what you think in the comments down below. I personally think while I love the RTG much and will never stop using it until it's removed, if it's removed, it's definitely overpowered in my opinion, but to each his own.